evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone. My name is Jessie Davey, and I am the East Africa Portfolio Director for Maliasili. I'm very excited to welcome everyone here to our webinar on strategic planning. Maliasili has facilitated more than 20 of Africa's greatest local conservation organizations to develop strategic plans. And after we complete a strategy, we often come together as a team to reflect on the experience so we can learn lessons and gain insights that can help us improve our practice. Today, we want to share those lessons and insights with you. We unfortunately don't have the capacity to help every conservation organization out there, but we think that we have some great materials, tools, knowledge, and experience that can help you become more strategic and improve your conservation impact. Just a few logistics before we get started. We will be using the chat feature to have people ask questions and comment, and we will respond to you either directly in the chat or we will address your questions and comments in the panel. We will also share some links to references in the chat, and we will be live tweeting using the hashtag that was just shared in the chat, Build Better Orgs, and we'd love to have you participate in that chat. Just to note that this will be an hour-long webinar. So now I'd like to turn this over to Fred Nelson. He is Maliasili's Executive Director and Founder, and he spends a lot of time thinking about strategic planning. So welcome, Fred.
All right, well, great to be here. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us. As Jessie said, we have spent a good part of our organizational journey over the past decade really thinking about how to design organizational strategies, work with great conservation organizations in Africa and even beyond, to get strategies that can help them to do their work better. And we're thrilled to be able to share some of those insights and tools and frameworks with a wider audience, and look forward to the feedback that we get from all of you. I'm going to give a presentation which provides a high-level overview of kind of our approach to strategic planning, what it is, why it matters, and how to develop a great one. Talk about some general insights and tips that we've developed, and then talk about kind of the key building blocks to develop a great strategic plan. So why does strategic planning matter? The core aspect of strategy is that it is your path to impact. We call strategic planning and your organizational strategy, it's your existential question. It's about why you exist, what you exist to achieve as an organization. And strategy is about describing and clarifying your organization's vision, your identity, your where you want to go and how you want to develop and grow as an organization. Another way to think about strategic planning is as charting your organization's journey. What mountain are you trying to climb? What do you want to achieve as an organization? And what are the key things you need to do along the way to get there? What are the key resources that you need in order to be successful? Those are those key building blocks. And you're trying to chart out that journey that you want to travel as an organization, as a team. So when thinking about the purpose of a strategic plan, there's kind of four key functions, four high-level roles that strategic planning can help you with. One is clarifying your identity, who you are as an organization, what your core purpose is. Providing focus, really identifying the key priorities for what it is that you want to achieve. What are you great at? What are the things that you're really going to concentrate your energies and your resources on as an organization? The other is growth. You know, how do you want to grow as an organization? What's your path to growth? What are the key resources that you need? You know, and not getting too granular about growth. Strategic planning is not about developing kind of line by line, multi-year budgets and getting too detailed about what's going to happen in the future. But what's that broad growth path that you want to be on as an organization? And then the last one is it provides really a foundation of guidance for the rest of your organization, a foundation for your annual work plans and your annual budgets, for your communication strategy, your funding strategy, your staffing and growth plans. It provides a foundation for all of those that you can use to guide your day-to-day and your week-to-week working plans. So a lot of times organizations, they turn to strategic planning because they feel stuck. They feel something's not working. They've maybe run out of momentum, you know, or lost direction a little bit, and they need to get reoriented and refocused on what it is that they exist to do. And that stuckedness, it kind of often comes from some common challenges that organizations face. One is this sense that, you know, they're all over a place. Organizations are busy, they're scrambling, you know, they're firefighting, they're being reactive, they're doing 20 things at once. And often when organizations are doing so many different things, they're not doing any of them really well. They're not excelling at any of them. That's a common problem, and it can lead to a lot of challenges within an organization and its effectiveness. You know, another one that's maybe a little related is what we call the project trap. I think this is common in the conservation field where so much work is structured through projects, but projects can really become a problem because they can result in an organization being less than the sum of its parts. Where you're running lots of different projects, or you've pursued a funding opportunity and you wind up with lots of projects, but what does it all amount to? What is it that you're trying to do as an organization? And that can lead to an organization being spread thin and feeling scattered, and again, lacking that core shared vision, which is so important for for the team and for the organization to know this is where we're trying to go, this is where we're trying to get to as a team. Another common challenge is that tension between big dreams and realities, right? And your work and your organization, your strategy needs to strike that balance in terms of dreaming big and being ambitious and having big goals that can achieve what you want to achieve, but also grounding it in reality in terms of what your strengths are as an organization, and what resources you have and what you can actually achieve. You know, and the last one is the inability to prioritize or struggle to prioritize and really focus on the most important things. And part of that is making tough choices. And strategic planning needs to, you know, a key thing that strategic planning process can do is help organizations to make those tough choices, identify those priorities, focus their efforts. Priorities, focus, that's a lot of what you want to get out of a strategic planning process. Now, importantly, there are important challenges, common challenges that organizations face as well that can't necessarily be addressed through the strategic planning process. For example, you know, deeper questions around culture and values, leadership, internal conflicts. You know, those are things that you know, your strategic plan, you know, can't necessarily solve, right? And it may not be the right time for a strategic planning process if those are challenges that you're facing as an organization. You know, and another thing that the strategic plan is not, and the purpose that you don't want it to serve, is to be a really detailed work plan or log frame or, you know, again, multi-year budget. That's not the purpose of the strategic plan, is to provide that level of detail. And we often see that as a common kind of pitfall in strategic planning in our conservation and environment field, where strategic plans wind up really being kind of multi-year action plans, multi-year budgets, maybe developed for a specific proposal, but where they don't really kind of serve the purpose of providing that higher level vision. So one other general insight and kind of high level point around strategic planning is you want to balance the old and the new. You really need to build a strategic plan on what an organization is great at. We say this over and over and over again in our work. You got to connect with what you're great at, what your strengths are as an organization, what your key achievements have been, the changes that you've brought about as an organization, and then you know, and balance that with fresh thinking, with innovation, with reflection on how you can do your work better, what new things you need to do. So that balance between the old and the new. You don't want to just do things the way you've been doing them forever, but you also don't want to leave your strengths and your core assets behind and just start doing lots of new things. The purpose of a strategic plan is not to just do everything differently. It's to balance the old and the new. So now I'm going to go through briefly kind of 8 core building blocks to developing a great strategic plan. The first one is around the process. You know, a lot of organizations that we work with, you know, they will they'll reflect and say that, you know, the process is just as important as the product. And I think the process of strategic planning done well, it permeates through all of an organization's work. And in enabling you to think strategically about all of your work and really get buy-in, you know, have an inclusive process that involves your team, involves your board, provides an opportunity to get input from key partners and collaborators and supporters, and engage them in thinking about the future of your organization. So that process, how you know, how it fosters ownership within the organization. You know, you sometimes hear, we've heard many times of, you know, an organization, the CEO says, well, I'm going to go off and write the strategic plan, or, you know, we've heard, you know, someone went off over the weekend and wrote the strategic plan. And of course, these are the strategic plans that wind up, you know, sitting on shelves or not at least motivating the team, you know, to really have purchase and buy-in around what it is that the organization's doing. So that process, having it participatory, having the space for reflection is so important and will benefit any organization. You know, and kind of the core steps that we think about, you know, the first one in that process, really reflecting on the context. What's the environment that you're operating within? I'll talk about that more in just a moment. You know, reflecting internally on what you've achieved, what you've done well as an organization. And then pivoting from kind of looking backwards. You know, the first part of the process tends to be looking backwards and reflecting on what you've done as an organization, to looking forwards. And plotting that future direction and your vision and your mission and your core ambitions. And then the last piece, you know, which is also another nice opportunity to get external review and engage with partners and supporters, is kind of the pulling it all together, reviewing, refining, finalizing the plan. What you want to have is where the team, you know, really feels that this is our process, this is our product, and the whole team has engaged and charted their path forward as an organization. So within that process, kind of, again, that first building block is around your context, analyzing your context. And it's the analytic piece. We call it situational analysis when we work with organizations on this. You know, and it's really that opportunity to get perspective on your work. This drawing captures what one organization in Southern Africa that we're working with said to us recently, which is that you can't read the label when you're in the jar. You know, and that's a struggle that a lot of organizations have, right? Is stepping back, getting perspective on your work, reflecting on both your external context, what's changing in your external environment, what are the key opportunities and new risks or threats that are arising that either you need to address or that creates opportunities for you to lean into and do more. You know, and what are your key strengths and weaknesses as an organization? You know, really get that 30,000-foot view of your environment and of your own organization. That's your starting point. That's your foundation for thinking about your future. You know, and that really helps you refine your value proposition as an organization, what you are uniquely positioned to do, or kind of what your niche is. And we think about that as kind of this overlap between what is the external environment, what does the world need, what do your constituents need, what's the opportunity there, and what are the things that you can do and that you're particularly good at, and where do those things interface? That tends to be where you can achieve the most impact and bring about the most change as an organization. And that's an important thing to zero in on in the process. So a third foundation is the problem identification. What problem do you exist to solve as an organization? You can't bring about change unless you're clear on the problem that you're trying to solve. You know, and that's about clarifying your problem statement. The problem statement leads to thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to overcome that problem? What do we need to do to bring about change? What are the solutions that we need to put in place? Who needs to do what differently in order to solve that problem? So having clarity around that problem is another key foundation building block of a good strategy. And thinking about your problem in an analytic way, it can lead to those reflections as from one of our partners in Kenya some years back, that you may not be focusing on the most important problem facing your work and your core purpose as an organization. You may be misallocating your resources, your time, your energy, your efforts towards things that aren't the core problem. And a key function of a strategic planning process, again, that prioritization and that focus on the most important problems, the things that are going to make the most difference to your work as an organization. So fourth pillar is, and this goes to that looking forward, your core purpose as an organization. And that this is your vision, your mission as an organization. Your vision is about the future that you're trying to bring into being as an organization. And your mission describes what you do to bring that future into being. Your mission, you want it to be clear, simple, direct, active in terms of this is what we do to bring about change. And I think a lot of times in the conservation environment field, issues are complex. They operate at multiple scales. They can be long-term challenges with different dimensions to it. And we wind up trying to explain everything or include a lot in the mission. And you wind up with kind of a word salad or jargon salad that we often see. And that kind of defeats the purpose in terms of providing the clarity of what exactly you exist to do as an organization, what change you're trying to bring about. You want to have that clarity, that simplicity. Our colleagues at Blue Ventures, we rebuild tropical fisheries with coastal communities. Grevy's Zebra Trust, we exist to conserve and grow the Grevy's zebra population in northern Kenya. Clear, straightforward, you understand what the organizations do. Mission statements and opportunity to really zero in on that focus. The next foundation is your theory of change, connecting what it is that you're trying to achieve with what it is that you actually do, how you bring about change, unpacking that core logic, in your work. And I think theory of change is another thing that can go wrong in terms of being really heavy with jargon, and a lot of complexity. And you really want to try to distill things down into your core components, your core interventions that you use to bring about change, to bring about your core outcomes, as with this basic model from Honey Guide, another organization that we'll be hearing from in a moment that we've worked with on their strategic plan. So setting good goals, that which kind of flows from your mission, your theory of change. What are you actually going to do? What are you actually going to try to achieve? That you do that through your goals, your objectives, which kind of form the meat, the backbone of your strategic plan. This is what we're going to set out to achieve over the next several years in order to deliver on our mission. And that creates a framework for all of your plans. You want that to guide your projects, your programs, your specific initiatives, at a more granular, on a more short-term basis. So your major goals are really setting the compass heading as an organization. Example again from Grevy's Zebra Trust, 4 core goals as pillars for their strategic plan. Monitoring and management directly of Grevy's zebra, improving community rangelands management through field training and working with communities, providing incentives that generate community support and benefits to encourage people to coexist with Grevy's zebra, and then addressing the challenge of infrastructure development, which is a goal that involves collaboration on kind of a different scale. So setting good goals, really critical component to your strategic plan. And then one of the final core components of your strategic plan, to put it all together, is focusing on your organization. And again, this is often where strategic plans and conservation, they don't focus maybe enough on the organizational capacity that you need in order to execute and deliver. And that's where you also can provide a bit of a reality check in terms of these are the resources, these are the capacities, these are the investments that we need in order to be able to execute. Funding, staffing, technology, infrastructure, systems, your organizational structure, your governance, your core building blocks of your capabilities as an organization. You really want to focus on those, again, at a pretty high level, not going into detailed annual budgets, but chart out kind of a high level path to growth that aligns with what you're setting out to achieve as an organization. this piece is so important to positioning yourself for success and really being able to deliver on the strategic plan. The last component, again, an area that we've emphasized a lot at Maliasili, is when you've put together a clear strategy, when you've provided your vision, set out your goals, identified what you need to build in terms of your internal capacity as an organization, really important to put that together in a visually compelling way, share it, package it, broadcast it. Your strategic plan should be one of your most valuable communications tools. It should be a huge asset in fundraising, because it's really articulating what you're all about and what you're seeking to achieve as an organization. And it should be internally something that you're proud of, and that people want to pick up and read, and they can quickly understand, hey, this is what this organization's all about. This is what they're setting out to achieve. These are their ambitions. This is why they exist. So those eight foundations: designing an inclusive process, analyzing your context, identifying your core problem that you need to solve, clarifying your purpose through your vision and your mission, unpacking your logic through your theory of change, setting clear goals and priorities, building your organizational capacity, and then sharing that product externally, using it as a valuable communication tool. Those are our 8 foundations, and this will all be included in some materials that we're sharing at the end of the webinar as well. So that is a quick overview. And I will now transition to talking about what this means to real organizations out in the field doing their work. So we have 2 guests who we are fortunate to have joining us for this session here today, from great pioneering community conservation organizations in East Africa. And we're going to hear from them on their experiences with strategic planning and how it's helped their organizations, and what some of their reflections are from the experience. So our 2 guest panelists are Belinda Low-Mackey, who is the co-founder and executive director of Grevi Zebra Trust, based in Northern Kenya. Belinda is born and raised in Kenya. She spent pretty much the past 2 decades of her life and career working to save the Grevi zebra, founding the Grevi Zebra Trust in 2007, which operates up in Northern Kenya, where the Grevi zebra is found. It's an endemic species to Northern Kenya and Southern Ethiopia. About 90% of the population found in community and private lands, primarily in Northern Kenya, where it coexists alongside many pastoralist communities. There's only about 3,000 Grevi zebra remaining. So it's one of the most endangered large mammals in Africa. And Grevi Zebra Trust is the only organization that's solely dedicated to this species and its future. And because of where the Grevi zebra lives and on community and private lands, Grevi Zebra Trust is very focused on working in close partnership with local communities, developing community-based solutions. That's been the core of the organization's work from the beginning. And also working with a range of other local and international conservation organizations in partnership. So welcome, Belinda. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Our other guest panelist is Sam Shaba. Sam is working with Honey Guide, which is an organization based in Arusha in northern Tanzania. Sam joined Honey Guide in 2014, and in 2017 became the program manager responsible for Honey Guide's overall program management, planning, monitoring, and evaluation. So he's basically running the programs, taking the lead in managing the organization. Honey Guide's focus is on community-based conservation, getting community-based conservation really to deliver and to be based on a sustainable, long-term, locally owned and managed business model, particularly with wildlife management areas in northern Tanzania and some of Tanzania's most important ecosystems for people and wildlife, such as lands around Tarangire National Park. Honey Guide really has pioneered a business-based approach of building local capacity to manage and develop benefits from their conservation activities, and really been pioneering that model in northern Tanzania. Sam was recently listed as one of the top 100 young African conservation leaders as well, just a couple weeks ago. Sam, welcome. Karibu.
Thank you, Fred.
So basically, I'm going to just ask a few questions, and for you guys to share some of your experiences with strategic planning, and what it's meant in practice to your work, and some of your reflections with everyone. So the first question is maybe just thinking back. Both your organizations. We worked with you guys maybe 4 or 5 years ago on your strategic plans. Take us back to where Grevy Zebra Trust and Honey Guide were at 4 or 5 years ago when you started the strategic planning process. What were some of the key challenges that your organizations were facing and that you wanted to address with your strategic planning? And Belinda, we'll start with you and then go to Sam. And we're going to show just a few slides while you guys are talking from Grevy Zebra Trust and Honey Guide's work and environment, so everyone can see you guys in situ a little bit as well. So Belinda.
Thanks, Fred. So I think, Grevy Zebra Trust grew fairly organically in the sense that we responded to threats and opportunities in the landscape. And our assumptions about our impact were very much based on intuitive logic. So sort of what we were seeing and what we were hearing from anecdotal feedback as well. And while we had kind of honed our Grevy Zebra monitoring work, we still had to look at, what was our impact on the rangelands and on our community engagement, which are two major pillars of, our work in northern Kenya. And we'd undertaken a strategic plan in 2014, which was looking very much in detail at the threats and kind of the drivers of those threats. And so we had, a very clear theory of change for our threats, but not really for us as an organization. So even after that process, we were still very much siloed with our work. So there wasn't a huge amount of coordination and support across our programs. And I felt like, we were really on autopilot. So we were working really hard. We were incredibly passionate about what we were doing. But we really needed to kind of take control of the direction we were going in and where we were going to land. And we also were facing some pretty significant situational challenges. So in northern Kenya, there's increasing land degradation. There's mega infrastructure coming into the landscape under Kenya's Vision 2030, which could present fragmentation issues. And there's also quite widespread insecurity. And so, really we needed to transition Grevy Zebra Trust into the next phase of its existence to be able to grow, to accommodate growth and be more effective in what we were doing. And I think as well, a strategic plan is a concise, focused document. And so we wanted to really define our North Star and start working towards that.
Great, thanks, Belinda. Sam, take us back to where Honey Guide was at. What were some of the kind of key challenges and needs you guys were feeling in your work in Tanzania at that time?
Yeah, thanks, Fred. So when I joined Honey Guide, it's right about the time when we started developing the strategic plan, the real strategic plan that we're using today. That was 2016, we started the process, and we had our first Go strategic plan in 2017. So remembering those few years that I was with Honey Guide without a strategic plan, we didn't really have a direction. So we would follow what the donor wanted, what you called the project trap. Our projects were really fragmented into donor projects. And most staff in the team were working in the similar silos, the fragmented programs. I remember I was a monitoring officer then. I was in charge with collecting data for the organization. So even these data that I was collecting, they were for specific projects. So all the staff each staff would be dealing with their own thing, their own project. So we didn't have an overarching monitoring for the organization because we didn't have an overarching direction for the organization. So this was during a period when we were growing, and we were learning. It was a good time where we were flexible and we were learning, and we were interesting. We had a document that we called a strategic plan, but it was bulky and useless. We never looked at it. I think it was more of a compliance issue. As an NGO, when they were registering, they needed a document to call a strategic plan. It's so far from what we have today. It was so useless, and it's so different from what we're using now. So this is the current one, and I don't want to show you what we had. So it was challenging. Things were all over the place. I remember early days. Honeyguide started from beach cleaning. For those who knows Honeyguide today, you'll know that this is so far from what we're doing. Planting cabbage in Serengeti is so far from what we're doing today and from what we want to be doing. So all those fragmentation and those projects relating to donors were what forced us to really sit down as a team and decide to develop a strategic plan.
Great, thanks, Sam. Yeah, that fragmentation, the project trap, yeah, I think a lot of times organizations find themselves doing all sorts of different things, and then looking back, say, how did we ever wind up doing some of the things that we were doing back then? Well, let's kind of come into the present, and having then gone through, developed the strategic plan, how has the work of your organization changed as a result? If you were doing those things kind of that in retrospect you didn't want to be doing, how do you think it's changed your work now? And Sam, let's go back to you and then to Belinda on that one.
So a few years down the line, we are more focused. We have a more focused team. Like I said before, I got to join Honeyguide when we had a strategic plan, so things were a bit easier for me. And then soon after getting a strategic plan, I think the process forced us to even look at how we want to run the organization in order to achieve what we wanted to achieve in the strategic plan. Our strategic plan was 5 years. So in the 5 years, now we are just about to develop a new one. So in the 5 years that I've been with Honeyguide and I've been with the strategic plan, I see we are now more focused. It is clear to us as a team. It is clear to our partners. It is even clear to the government on what Honeyguide does, and more importantly, what Honeyguide doesn't do. So it's easy even to our donors to know which projects would interest us and which won't, which we'll be involved with and which we will not. So one of the changes that I see with the strategic plan also on a painful side is that we lost some significant donors in the process. But we had to choose between continuing with what the donor wanted or doing what we wanted, and we chose the latter. So there was some pain, but I think it was a blessing in disguise for us. And now we are a more efficient organization. We're more efficient as a team because of having a clear strategy.
I think that's a really important point, Sam, the importance of, and that goes back to the process as well. When you have ownership of your strategy and you really believe in it, even when you get external pressure from government or donors or communities, which there will always be, right? There'll always be pressure to kind of deviate or take something else on. But when you've got that ownership, it helps you stand your ground and really be firm and clear in your identity. Belinda, how has Grevy Zebra Trust changed over the last few years?
I think the biggest change has been that we are all really invested in our mission. So one of the first things that we did was to disseminate our strategic plan draft to our community teams and also our community networks. And so our mission statement is now sung and danced in 3 different local languages. And there's just real ownership of the plan. And that's led to much stronger coordination and support across programs. So Our work planning is more integrated. You know, every quarter we're reviewing like where we're at with like our work plan and our targets. And I think, you know, from feedback from my team, they're just like, you know, every activity that we do, we know that it's leading to a bigger target. And so they're really invested in their work. We also, a little bit like Sam said, you know, about, you know, you ask the question, is this action or this partnership or this donor going to lead us towards our mission? And if it's not, then it's okay to say no. So we've become much more discerning in that respect. You know, we all have really sort of finite resources, and so we want to make sure all our energy is being put into the right activity and program. Out of the strategic planning process, we realized that our rangelands work, which is, you know, all about basically addressing the threat of land degradation in northern Kenya, was kind of underpinning everything. And so we decided to mainstream that program across our whole team. And so we trained our whole team on you know, how they could support their community to plan grazing, to plan their land use in a more sustainable way. And we've had really great results from that. We've had like individuals within the team taking action with their communities. And so that's been led by them and not by the organization necessarily. And then, you know, out of strategic planning process comes obviously, you know, you identify all the gaps that you need to be able to support your growth going into the future. So we've got you know, quite a few pieces of work that have come out of the strategic plan that we're doing now, like a fundraising strategy. We're currently finalizing a fundraising deck, a communication strategy. We haven't started that yet, but it's a real gap that we have. And then in particular, our monitoring and evaluation is, you know, a key area that was part of the reason we did the strategic planning process in the first place. And now we're doing impact models for all our programs. So, I mean, a lot of organizational strengthening going on.
Thanks, Belinda. For both of you, and Belinda, let's start with you. Thinking about that kind of that seventh building block I talked about of building your organization, you know, and thinking about, okay, this is the work we want to do. This is the capacity we need. How has your kind of organization internal dynamics changed? And were there specific kind of areas where you needed to invest or improve in order to be able to do the work that you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I think one of the first steps that we took was to create a senior leadership team. And that was really to kind of bring more collective responsibility for kind of like the high level decisions in the organization. And that's really helped me as the executive director. It's really supported my role. So that's been a huge help. And it's also meant that we've been able to, you know, really have a lot of close coordination across our programs. We also, you know, I think the wider team has really benefited from, like, we started instituting like regular meetings, so weekly, which are, you know, they're weekly meetings. And that was about not just, you know, obviously coordinating our work plans and everything, but also about getting to know each other better. So creating that, building the intimacy within the team. And strategic plans should be values-based as well. So I feel like, you know, that whole process has taken our values. And for example, we face a pandemic currently. Conservationists generally are facing massive challenges, which can create a lot of stress. So in order to have a resilient team, to be able to take your strategic plan forward, you know, one of the things we're focusing on this year is creating a well-being program so that our team can thrive and do their jobs for, you know, as best they can. And I think, you know, because people own the plan, they have a lot more creativity and autonomy within their roles. And so, like, for example, one of the members of our research team, she understands, you know, really clearly, like, how her piece of work is contributing to the mission. And she's taken our smart monitoring and she's just run with it and made it her own. And so, you know, it's just created opportunities for the team to really grow in their roles. And I think the internal communications has like been a huge, there's been a huge change in that, so it's really strengthened within the organization.
Thanks, Belinda. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the kind of core challenges that we often see with all the groups we work with and in the wider conservation field, right? Organizations grow, but your management systems, your development internally of your team, the balancing out of responsibilities, dealing with excess, dependence kind of on a few individuals, which I'm sure you've experienced as a co-founder. Yeah. And really using the strategic plan to think about the growth that an organization needs to go through in order to become more resilient for the long term across the whole team. Sam, how about for Honey Guide, how has the organization changed and what have been kind of some of the key internal developments and choices that you guys made as a result of your strategy?
So I think first and foremost, for me, coming from the program side of things, as in different to Belinda, who is more on the organization executive director. So from the program side of things, I think the most satisfaction that I got from having a strategic plan, and I believe all my colleagues in the program side, is that autonomy that Belinda talked about. So having to know the goal that we're working towards, that there's some autonomy in everyone knowing that how their work fits to the bigger goal. As in different to a period where only, for example, I think the executive director had the passion and probably knew where he wanted the organization to go, but the team didn't necessarily know. I didn't know when I was like in a senior or in a junior role. The other thing that I see that changed is that very soon, following that strategic plan, we optimized our team. We have become a lean organization, slightly by choice, but partly because of the donors that we lost. So we have become a lean organization. We lost some staff, of course, but partly by choice. We decided in our strategic plan, we decided the areas we wanted to be and the areas we wanted to drop. So we also decided which projects we were going to drop, which might have impacted the staff that we lost. I remember when I joined in 2014, and then we were developing this strategic plan in 2016. We decided that we wanted, for example, a program manager in order to relieve the executive director from daily program management and operations, so that he can focus on the strategic direction of the organization and fundraising. And that's how my position was created as a program manager for Honey Guide. That was a result of our strategic plan, deciding who do we need and how we were going to do it. So that, I would say, is one of the high things that changed in our organization following this strategic plan, and the roles of individual team members and the resources that we needed to achieve what we wanted to achieve.
Great, yeah, super important thinking about roles, roles and structure. Again, another piece that you want to flow out of that thinking about your strategy and what you want to achieve. So we've got about 15 minutes left in the webinar and maybe about 10, 12 minutes left for our discussion. I'm going to start incorporating some of the questions that are coming through on the chat. And please, for everyone out there, go ahead and send in some questions. We won't be able to get to all of them, but we can combine a few of them and drill into a few more topics with Sam and Belinda based on those. So the fundraising, funding is obviously a big challenge organizations face at all times, especially kind of smaller grassroots local organizations such as you guys. And how, first of all, a few questions have identified, okay, the tension, and Sam, you talked about it, right? And how funders will try to get you to do something or to fit, maybe to take on a project. How have you used your strategic plan to manage that tension and to support the fundraising of the organization? And if you're saying no to things, as you both said, how are you fundraising? How do you use the strategic plan to fundraise and manage that pressure from donors or projects? Let's start with you, Sam.
So the first one is knowing which to go for and which one to not even waste our energy. So from the strategic plan, it guides us on which calls for which proposals to write and which not to. That's the very first one. The second one is, well, with that pain, it's just the courage saying, according to our strategic plan, we won't be able to do that when you're asked to be funded to do something you don't want to do. We went through a time when we had to say no and we didn't have enough to achieve what we wanted to do. But it was easier to explain to those donors who had given us the little for the few that we could do with that little. It was easier to tell them the reason we didn't achieve all the fundraising goals that we had is because we couldn't go for the first option available out there. For our organization, the biggest challenge is that there is overemphasis on funding anti-poaching, for example. And we don't want to be known as an organization that does anti-poaching only. We want to be known as an organization that supports community-based conservation. So there are a lot of anti-poaching funds out there, but we just don't want to go for them. And we can easily say no to those.
And just to follow up on that, Sam, and has the strategic plan, has it helped you to access maybe funding that you weren't able to access before?
Well, that has to do with the communication which came after the strategic plan. So we were communicating better on our strategy. And then that way, I think we have attracted the donors who understands us, the donors who want to support what we're doing. So in a way, with the strategic plan and the communications that we unrolled after the strategic plan, it has really helped us secure the donors that we want, the donors who understand what we want and accept it.
Great, thanks. Belinda, what are your thoughts on funding and the intersection of funding and strategy and saying no?
Well, I think it's really important to share your strategic plan with trusted donors so that they understand what direction you're now going in. And yeah, I think I write a lot of the proposals for Grevy Zebra Trust, and it's been so much easier to have like this one language. And also because your strategic plan is really, it really kind of emphasizes your identity. It's easy to write about who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it. So in that respect, I think proposal writing, identifying the right donors has really, been much easier for us. And we've also had an opportunity come across, a new opportunity for funding our rangelands work, which, came about because we were able to articulate in our strategic plan how we wanted to grow the program, and then, translate that into a proposal.
Yeah, great. Creating new opportunities. And just going back to something, Sam, that you said too, that word courage, right? The courage. And I think having the focus and knowing what your priorities are is a part of having that courage, right? To say no, to turn down an opportunity, to not go for a project. And there are a number of questions around the project trap, right? And I think like that's part of the trap is always going after projects, which then you find maybe you didn't actually want to do. They weren't what you wanted to be doing as an organization. That's the trap in response to some of the questions. Reflecting on the current situation, what we've all been going through and the tremendous challenges that conservation organizations have been facing as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and, major challenges in East Africa right now. Just wonder if what are your thoughts on how your strategic plan and some of the changes that you've described, how's that helped you to deal with the, everything you've had to face over the past year, whether it's funding or community challenges? How's it kind of positioned you and maybe helped you to deal with the challenges of the present? Belinda?
Yeah, I could take that to start with. So I think, well, immediately that, the pandemic started, we realized that we needed to develop a COVID-19 response strategy because, we're dealing with a lot of uncertainty. And also our teams are quite remote, so we're all quite spread out and obviously we weren't going to be able to see each other. And we realized that, our team culture is critical for us to continue doing our work and being successful. And so, just very quickly pivoted to online meetings, and again, making sure that people are okay. And I think also, through the strategic planning process, we realized how important partnerships are. And so we were able to partner with a health provider, the Communities Health Africa Trust and Ewaso Lions and Maliasili actually, to provide kind of COVID awareness and preparedness within the communities that we were working in. And then it was a very quick decision for us. We have a reusable sanitary pad program, which is part of our community support pillar. We quickly pivoted to making protective face masks, and that was just such an easy decision because we knew that it was going to have a huge impact for the community.
Sam, any thoughts on how kind of your strategic plan has helped you guys stay resilient and manage the challenges of the last year?
Okay, so one thing has to do with the donors that we work with. So like I said, the strategic plan helped us get the donors who understand us. So one advantage of the donor who understand us is understanding that sometimes there needs to be flexibility in the budgets. So some portion of unrestricted funding helps us a lot navigate through this period. Some kind of adjusting the time frames and pausing some work, and the donors understanding all that. The other thing is we managed to survive because with the strategic plan, we made what we call a survival budget scenario. So we looked at our strategic plan and we said, what's very critical for us to keep doing just during this pandemic period and still like push us further towards the strategic goal that we have, the 5 years strategic goal. So with our survival budget remaining with only the critical activities and critical expenses, we were able to navigate last year, and we are able to navigate now. We are slightly better this year than last year, but last year we went through the entire year under a survival budget scenario. So that was the other advantage that our strategic plan helped us with.
Yeah, and I think being clear about your priorities, we've seen that when organizations are clear about their priorities and what are the most important things that they need to be doing, that really helps you to have that kind of stripped down, bare bones budget, and know what you've got to keep going in tough times. We're almost out of time, but let's just close with maybe one kind of, what's your one key or final piece of advice for other organizations that are out there, local organizations, groups that are thinking about their strategy, maybe that are facing some of the common challenges I described earlier. One final piece of advice, Sam, and then Belinda.
Just one.
Just one. Pick your top one.
Just top
piece of advice.
Belinda, you go.
Okay, fine. Inclusivity, just make it all about your team. If they don't own it, it won't have the impact. So you want to hear your team saying, we created this strategy ourselves. I own, this is my strategy.
Great,
okay.
Thanks, Belinda.
So make it simple. This is the pocket version of our strategic plan. It can fit in my pocket. So don't overcomplicate it. If you have to invest into like some graphics, do it. Don't put too much text. Make it simple, make it useful. If it's not simple, it won't be used.
That is great advice, Sam, and so important for, I think, us working in conservation. We've seen so many 50-page strategic plans, too much detail, but again, really zero in on that high-level identity, purpose, mission, and really who you are. Great way to close, Sam. All right, well, thank you both so much. Of course, really appreciate you guys taking the time, and we are thrilled, as always, to be working with you guys and supporting your inspiring work out there, and really appreciate the insights, and I'm sure all of the audience has as well. So thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Fred.
Jesse, back to you.
Great, thanks, Fred. And thank you so much, Belinda and Sam. That was just awesome. And also for everyone who's attended, your questions, your comments, they're so good. And if we weren't able to respond to you, hopefully some of the follow-up materials that I'm going to talk about just now will help. But otherwise, feel free to reach out to us with any questions. So a few final notes before we close. The first is we will send you an email shortly that has a number of different resources and links to more information and tools about strategic planning. We're really excited to announce that we are launching 2 new materials. The first is the Foundations of Strategic Planning. It's essentially a summary of the presentation that Fred just gave today. And the other is a workbook that sort of complements the Strategic Planning Foundation guide book. And it has exercises that can guide you through the strategic planning process. We are also launching a 30-day strategy challenge, which you can sign up for. And with the challenge, we will be sending you 1 email a week, only 1 email. And in that email, we are asking some tough questions, and we will guide you with some exercises to help you answer those questions. And our goal is to really make you you and your organization more strategic in your thinking. There are other ways to engage with Maliasili as well. We have a bi-weekly newsletter. We call it The Reader, and it covers all sorts of different organizational topics. And we include tips and advice and guidance from both Maliasili and from our partners and others. And then lastly, you can follow us on social media, where we also are quite active, and you can engage with us and learn a lot from that discussion. Thank you so much once again. Thank you again, Belinda and Sam, Grevy Zebra Trust, and Honey Guide. And thank you everyone for attending today. We hope that we will see you on another webinar soon. Bye.